I'm doing my designer presentation on the English landscape designer Humphry Repton. Humphry Repton was a well-known English landscape designer who was born in Bury St. Edmunds, Suffolk, England on April 24th, 1752. He died on March 24th, 1818 in London and was 65 years old when he passed. He was remarkably old for his time when the life expectancy was only 55 in the 1800s. One of his hobbies included painting, and although he was expected to become a textile merchant due to his wealthy background, he didn't have any aptitude for pursuing the merchant career, and so he took his small family and moved out into the country, where his watercolor paintings improved and he became interested in the management of land. Here you can see a photo of Humphry Repton, and then here are a few photos of his watercolor paintings. In 1788, he decided to become a landscape designer after his interest in land management peaked. He asked wealthy friends, like the Duke of Portland and Coke of Norfolk, for their support of his career, and that was the takeoff of his success. Although never having formally studied the topic, he was adept in a method of painting the landscapes he was upon and proposing alteration to it on an overlay, which was relatively simple when done with watercolor. Like many landscape designers, both in his time and in the present, Repton tried his hand at landscape architecture. Here you can see examples of his beautiful watercolor designs, which he would put the base design down in front of his clients, and then with another sheet of watercolor paper, he would put his proposed design over to show them what they were going to get. Although he tried architecture, he often worked with others who had the professional qualifications. He collaborated with John Nash and his own son, John Addy Repton. Repton's landscapes were nowhere near as large as Capability Brown's, but his landscapes were generally more plant-heavy and thicker with plant life. Repton often had transitions between home and garden with terraces, balustrades, and steps. He was very inspired by the picturesque movement, which was heavily carried by wild landscapes. Here on the right is a picture of John Nash. He was an architect that Humphry Repton would often team up with. And over here on the left is Humphry Repton's own son, John Addy Repton. He was an architect as well. The first design I will be talking about is Hotel Ensley. Hotel Ensley is a historic 100-acre ground that was designed by Humphry Repton. Located in Devon, England, it has amazing views of the River Tamar Valley. The hotel was once Ensley Cottage, built for the 6th Duke of Bedford and his wife in 1810, and it was mainly used as a hunting and fishing lodge. It was built to nestle unobtrusively into the landscape, which is a style coined as cottage ornée. When construction on the home finished in 1814, Humphry Repton was invited to design the 100 acres. He had previously designed the Duke's Garden at his Woburn home. The Ensley Garden remains as one of the most perfect examples of the picturesque style of landscape. Repton would coined his famous red linen-bound portfolios for his clients, and he would show them what their gardens would look like through watercolor designs. Ensley still owns their red book to this day. Here are some of the early designs Humphry Repton had for the Ensley estate. And here are some picturesque style examples that are currently present in the Ensley Gardens that have kept true to this day from when he first designed it. Ensley was one of Repton's last designs. He had to be carried around in a sedan chair to complete it, as he could no longer walk at that point. The garden around the home provides a comfort and intimacy, while further out into the garden supplies a sense of adventure and wonder. Repton's plan for Ensley was for it to be an exciting alpine terrain with many viewpoints, paths, and steps, with many different paths leading to hidden amenities. He also made sure the lawns of the then cottage would sweep down to the Tamar River, and he made sure the views of the water was never blocked by trees. The hotel has gone through many hands, but the feel and general layout have been carefully kept over the 200 years it has been standing. The next design of his I'll be covering is the Blaise Castle. Thomas Farr bought the 110 acres of Blaise Castle's land when it was known back in 1762 as the Old Manor House, Henbury Estate. The property backed onto Henbury Village, up Blaise Hill, and had an amazing view of Hazelbrook Gorge down below. Farr did not own the property long, however, as he went bankrupt shortly after the Revolutionary War. That is when the property was bought by Repton's future client, a banker known as John Scandrett Harford. Here are some great above sky level views and just general pictures of Blaise Castle and its estate. Harford and Repton, shortly after the new ownership was settled, began cutting down trees. Repton said, "Thou fully aware of the common objections to cutting down trees, yet it is only by a bold use of the axe that the wonders of Blaise Castle can be properly displayed." Him and Harford were getting many complaints from the neighbors about how they were cutting down the trees, but I think Repton had a great response to their annoyance. Repton aimed to make Blaise Castle more private and an escape from the bustle of the world. In this garden design, Repton grasped the picturesque style and carried it through the construction of this garden. There was a deep valley and spectacular views of the water, with the homes set far back on the property. He would create enchanted grounds with places to sit, with caves and waterfalls. The most notable aspect of Blaise Castle is its looping, winding drive, where the trees slowly open to reveal the castle hiding behind them. The third and final design that Humphry Repton designed that I chose is Ashridge Estate. Located in one of his red books, Repton talks about his designs for the property of Ashridge, which was built for the 7th Earl of Bridgewater. Repton actually regarded Ashridge as one of his greatest projects, although in all his red books he normally says this about the property he is designing. Repton was disappointed he didn't get to have a say in where the mansion on the property was positioned, and it threw him off a bit. However, he soon turned that into an advantage by trying something new. This is the mansion that they made, and there are beautiful walks through the estate as it's a massive, massive property of land. He suggested there be 15 gardens on the property, all in different styles. When he was critiqued on this, he said, "There is no more absurdity in collecting gardens of different styles, dates, characters, and dimensions in the same enclosure, and placing the works of Raphael and Teniers in the same cabinet, or books sacred and profane in the same library." Here's a picture of Repton's plan for the Ashridge Estate. And then here is a picture of the grotto in the present day and the design for a conduit. He was inspired by the monastic origins that Ashridge came from, and the new home for the Earl was even built over the monastic cellars. Repton suggested they build a monk's garden. This is the monk's garden design that he proposed. With clipped box hedges, flower vases, and many other aspects relative to a more monastic time. He died before a lot of his designs could be made true, however a lot of his ideas were still used. Repton also wanted to build a new grotto on the property and even designed an approach tunnel for it. Over here. Made from iron framework and flint. Even more famous on Ashridge than the grotto, however, is Repton's rosary. to be a clear basin with arched structures all around the outside of the rosary, with its fountain positioned in the middle, drawing water from the holy well. Here's the rosary. Design style and contribution to design. Repton's design style was heavily and primarily influenced by the picturesque style of landscape. He designed and prepared around 400 designs for landscapes all over England. He also occasionally did themed gardens. A lot of his work also included terraces, gravel walks, and flower beds, which at the time he reintroduced back into landscapes. A lot of his work links designs of the 18th century and the early Victorian gardenesque movement together. His ideas about designs are still used today, and he began using the more elaborate style of ornamental or themed planting, which became popular in the 19th century. The picturesque style is when you look at a landscape through an artistic point of view, and it became popular in the 18th century. It remains beautiful, but retains some wildness to it, to make landscapes look more like pictures. Here are some more of his watercolors of some landscapes, and I love this picture. Fun facts about Humphry Repton. He actually wrote 3 books. Well, profound books, very popular books. He wrote Sketches and Hints on Landscape Gardening, which was published in 1795. He wrote Observations on the Theory and Practice of Landscape Gardening, published 1803, and Fragments on the Theory and Practice of Landscape Gardening, which was also published in 1803. He also wrote and drew red books for his clients, which featured his famous watercolor paintings of their designs and idea for the landscape. The red books also showed that Repton believed that landscaping was an art. Here's one of the red books for the Bransbury and Glenham Hall. Another fun fact is he was in a serious carriage accident in 1811, which left him in a wheelchair, that eventually led to his death in 1818. He also created the title Landscape Gardener for himself, and he didn't make as much money as Capability Brown because he only designed the landscapes. He didn't install them like Capability Brown did. Here's the bibliography of all the different sites that I used. And that concludes my presentation on the English landscape designer, Humphry Repton.